right now. Now you can specifically, and a faculty member can specifically request for a remote to be put in the classroom where they're teaching if they'd really like to practice with that, but it has to go through Nick Blakeney.
Can I just repeat what you said to make sure I understood? You're
Sure.
saying there's only remotes in Brazos, but the other buildings do not have remotes?
No, there's only the remote is in Brazos 200 right now. That's the only remote in, because
understood.
they're concerned about remotes, you know, being lost or walking off because
Walking
they're
away.
$100 each. Yeah.
Those are the remotes that change the camera angles, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Is there another way to do it? Can they get like remotes like fixed to the?
No, we've talked about it, and we just
like,
don't see.
Ones that are like affixed to the front of the room
Yeah.
somewhere, so they can't be moved.
I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they are concerned about it, definitely.
Okay. Thanks for telling me. I will chat with Russ and Mallory and see what solutions we can come up with too.
Okay.
Well, it's about 5 minutes into our time. Do you think we should probably get going? Guess we've given everybody a chance to.
I think so, to respect people's time.
Yeah. I think we'll record the session and then maybe do something with it later. Possibly end up on a YouTube or something. So just FYI, we are recording. So to start off today, we're going to talk about dual modality and give you some tips and ideas of best practices, what you can do in terms of how to approach your course and how to teach. I do want to advise that these are recommendations. They're not requirements. And every course is going to be different, from a chemistry lab to a course on British literature. They're going to be taught different ways, and so some of these things may apply and some things may not. I'll probably be going through the slides. My name is Dr. Aaron Dilday, and Dr. Amanda Salinas will be giving me great expert help and directing me when I go astray. So if you have questions, please feel free to jump in with them. I think Dr. Salinas, you can manage the chat and keep an eye out for those. And
Definitely.
So, yeah, so then we can jump in if you have questions along the way. It's a pretty small group, so as long as there aren't too many questions, we should be able to handle them as we go. So to start off, I thought it would be a good idea to just kind of get an overview here of what are we going to talk about, and there's several kind of points that we're going to go through. First is we're going to talk about the terminology, just so everybody has kind of a level playing field of what we're talking about. We'll talk about some sort of considerations that you can do for creating inclusive and equitable classrooms. We'll have some suggestions for encouraging participation, which that's always a plus, right? Getting students to participate in any modality is always a challenge. There are some recommended best practices for teaching dual modality classes. We've gone through a lot of the literature on this. A lot of articles have been written in the last 1.5 to 2 years of the pandemic of how to teach people online in various modalities, and Dr. Salinas and myself have read a lot of that. We've tried to collect a lot of those ideas and put them into this presentation. We want to wrap it with some ideas for assessment design. How do you design your tests, your assignments, so that they're equitable and fair? And then we have a conclusion slide that's kind of the 5 big ideas, I think, or maybe the 5 maybe most important key points to take away. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but if you had to boil it down to just 5 things, you know, a nice round number, those would be the 5 big ones. So let's look at some key terms. Dual modality, that is the phrasing we're using here at Palo Alto College to describe courses that are offered simultaneously in person, that's face-to-face, and remotely on Zoom. So that's when you have students in the classroom and students on Zoom at the same time. Different schools may refer to this differently. There's a whole host of language out there to describe this type of teaching, but we are going to use dual modality as what we refer to this as. And then for short, we are going to refer to in-person students, the ones face-to-face in the classroom with you. We're just going to call them roomers. And then the ones remote who are on Zoom at the same time, they're Zoomers. So those are just the basic terminology we're going to use as shorthand. Another word you'll see a lot in here is equity. Equity is, there's been a lot of trainings, I've seen a lot of presentations on this, equity, equality, justice, etc. in the last couple of years. I've seen a lot of workshops, been to a lot of these. Equity, you could do a whole lesson on just defining the idea of equity. I'm just going to shorten it very briefly to this idea of trying to provide the opportunity for fair inclusion of all students, trying to make it a fair opportunity for everyone to succeed equally in the end. That's kind of what we're looking to do here. It's not exactly equality. Again, this is a whole discussion, and it's outside what we're doing, but that's a basic idea of what we're trying to do here, is make things a fair playing field for everybody. So those are some of the basic words we'll be using through here, and I just wanted to make sure we're all kind of together on this. So maintaining an inclusive and equitable classroom. This is where we're going to start with. It's kind of talking about some general classroom ideas and concepts. First, learning is both a social and cognitive process. It is something that works well with communication between people, and it is a cognitive process as well. And in developing a good learning environment, one of the first places to start is to instill a mindset in your students that they're all members of one classroom community. And for dual modality, this is kind of the challenge, right? Because for half your students, it'll be easy because they'll be sitting right in front of you. The other half will be on a computer screen far away. And the challenge is to make sure that they all connect and understand they're part of the same community. Because this is part of learning, right? This idea that it's a social function. And this idea that you want them to make connections with each other. That's part of the benefit of taking a class together and not doing some sort of like an independent study or something, right? That's the benefits of learning together. And so you want to set the tone from day one that it's a joint community. Roomers and Zoomers, you're all in this together. And just because you're on Zoom, that doesn't mean you get to check out. Or just because you're in person, that doesn't mean that you showed up. So, hey, that was your participation because you're breathing in this room. No, it's a one community together, and they all need to have that same level of expectation. And that then feeds into the idea that they all have to participate actively during class. This isn't just for people who are physically present. Zoomers need to be part of the discussion as well. You know, and it's a challenge. I got a lot of blank screens. I don't know about you guys, but the log in and then the screen goes blank. It's hard to ensure that the Zoomers are participating, but we have some tips to try and help with that. But again, set the expectation early that in person or online, they're students in the same community classroom. And the expectations are going to be the same. For instance, that they participate. Now, you need to set those expectations for your course. You need to define participation. You need to define all of those expectations for your students. And jumping down the list a couple here, but you need to clearly communicate those expectations. You know, tell them, what do you expect of them? In my Canvas course, I have a page on expectations. What do I expect of students, and what can they expect of me? And I outline those things very clearly. Your students read it, hopefully, but at least it's there, and I've communicated it to them, and so they should be aware of it. And again, communication is key. Ensure that students know how to communicate with you. Again, because you're going to be juggling a lot if you teach a dual modality class. It's like doing a remote class and an in-person class at the same time. And if you know if you've had to do this in the past, which we've all been teaching on Zoom, and if you've taught in person before that, you know there's a comparison there, right? There's a lot to do. You don't approach face-to-face and Zoom the same way. And to do both at the same time can cause issues. So make sure you're communicating with your students. Make sure communication lines are clear and that you're able to talk with them and let them know what's going on in the class, what you expect of them, and keep everybody together, because you're, again, communication is key to creating that sense of community between the roomers and Zoomers. Another thing I want to point out is I think a Canvas course is a good place for also kind of bridging that gap between the roomers and Zoomers and creating that communal space. Because while they can't both be in your classroom physically, they can all go to that Canvas course stage, and that will be the same experience for them no matter if they're roomers or Zoomers. They go to Canvas, they all see the same thing. At least that's how it should be. That's what I would recommend, is make sure it's the same thing, because you want to create this baseline experience for them to share as a community, and so that they can then, again, develop together with the course. If you have some students going left and some students going right, it gets confusing, especially if we start then segregating roomers versus Zoomers. Again, then they're not getting the same experience, and it's going to be harder for them to connect with each other. One thing I want to remind everybody is BioSig is a required part of Canvas courses. It's for all students, not just online, not just Zoomers, but also roomers. Everybody has to do the BioSig. If you're using online course requirements for assessments, like assignments, essays, exams, you got to use BioSig. It's a school requirement. So make sure you set that up as well. And don't just do it for the Zoomers because you think, oh, well, they're remote, so they have to do this. But also do it for the roomers as well. Anytime you have assessments online, you got to do it for both. I think the standard, and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, is 4 or 5 BioSig check-ins a semester?
3, a minimum of 3. And it is required by our accrediting agency to show that we are trying to mitigate cheating and to keep standards of quality in our courses.
So yeah, you can figure out whatever works best for you, how to spread that out. I usually do it. I have my course broken into units, and so I'll do it at the beginning of each unit. I'll require it. Some people, I think Dean Lee said he does it at the beginning of every exam. He offers like 3 or 4 exams. However you feel the best way to break it up is for you. Just make sure that you are remembering that the in-person students still need to do the BioSig. If you have your course through Canvas, and you're doing stuff on Canvas, you do need the BioSig.
And if you need help with the BioSig, Mallory has some really good videos on the TLC YouTube channel on how to do the BioSig.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of help if you need it for the BioSig. And the Canvas templates are also really good if you've seen those. If you don't know what I mean when I say Canvas template, you can stick around afterwards and we'll talk about it. I'm not sure if it's on the TLC YouTube page or not, but I know Raleigh Way, our instructional designer, had put together a PAC template page, and there's also one available from the district, and they include instructions for BioSig in them. So if you want more on that after this discussion, we can talk about that as well. So another good habit, and this isn't just for dual modality, this is something that I would recommend you do as well for all your classes if you can, is try and get regular student feedback. We all know that there's an end of semester student survey, right? The classic survey, you go to take class, pretty much anywhere at college in this country. You have that dreaded survey at the end of the semester where the professor's got to leave the room and then they drop it off, at the department office or whatever. That feedback is good, but you should get regular feedback throughout the semester, because that feedback, if students actually take it seriously, will help you next semester, but it won't help you in your present semester. Check in with your students from time to time and see, how's it going? Does everyone feel included and heard? And that's a good question for a dual modality class. Are the roomers and Zoomers both having a good experience? Are they both kind of feeling like they're part of the class? Or the Zoomers, if you get a lot of Zoomers telling you they feel left out, that might be something that you'd want to know in week 3 versus week 16. So it's good to ask for feedback, and it doesn't have to be anything formal. It could just be an anonymous survey, through Canvas, through Google Forms. There are a whole bunch of ways you could do it, but an anonymous survey could be very helpful. And it's also good to check in with your students, even just informally, and ask them how they're doing. Ask them, can you access all the assignments? Are they all showing up the same for everybody? You know, depending on how some of our classes might be arranged, some of you might have dual modality classes that are actually 2 separate sections. And so they might show up as 2 separate sections in Canvas because they each have their own CRN, right, for the in-person students and the Zoom students. And even though they're at the same time, they're technically in the system 2 CRNs, and so in Canvas, they may show up as 2 separate classes. I know that's how we're doing it in our department, at least.
There is a way that you can merge the Canvas classes, and Yvette Rios is actually in this meeting right now, and she's the one who's the guru on this, and you can merge them, and yet you can still have where it shows which students belong to the Zoom section and which students belong to the Canvas section. So if it's too confusing for you, if you have a lot of the dual modalities, you've got umpteen sections on Canvas, there is a way where you can merge this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would recommend you try to do that. I think it's probably less confusing if you do it by your class and combine those Roomers and Zoomers into one section if you can. But again, check to make sure that it all works. You know, with technology, you know, we hope it works. But yeah, how's it look on the student end? You know, make sure that they're seeing what you want them to be seeing and are hoping that they're seeing. So these are things why you should always check in with them. And especially for dual modality, you know, it's, again, keep that communication going with the Zoomers. Make them feel like they're part of your classroom experience. And so asking them how they're doing is a good way of doing that. You know, we all like when someone asks us how we're doing, right? So don't leave your Zoomers out there. And the final point on this slide, and this is one that I think it's easier said than done maybe, is be prepared. You know, spend time thinking about how should I approach this course. You know, envision yourself, you're in your classroom and you're teaching your 12 or 15 or however many it is in person, and then you got the Zoomers. Well, what does that look like? Are you going to keep the Zoomers on the projection screen? Are you going to do a PowerPoint slide? Are you going to be writing on the board? What is your class going to look like? And prepare in your mind how you're going to teach that class. You know, preparation is key here. And we had talked about before the session started, training opportunities, right? They're going to have, I think Amanda said, open lab sessions. I would strongly recommend you go there and you get on that camera and you do and record yourself. Even if you're just doing a 5-minute, just practice, you know, class, just get on there, record yourself and see what's it look like from the student perspective. Is it making sense? And then go through the motions. You know, if you normally use the dry erase board or you normally use PowerPoints, make sure you've thought through how that will look to the Roomers and Zoomers, because they're both going to have to see this. And we did some practice runs with the cameras, and they're pretty good. But remember, you have to remember the cameras can't always see if you write really, really small. You know, they may not be able to pick that up.
And the other thing is, even if the TLC does not have the open lab sections, I recommend that you come in yourself. Go into Brazos 200. It's all set up in there, and go through and really practice, because when you actually start to practice it, it's actually a lot different than from when you're sitting in a session and watching it. Because when you sit in a session and you watch Mallory do it, you might think, yeah, I got this. And then when you go in on your own and you go to do it, you're like, oh, I don't have this. I do not have this. So I had that happen with an instructor this morning. He thought he had it, and he didn't. And then the other thing is, Mallory put together a really nice hard copy of step-by-steps. And this morning, the instructor forgot his step-by-step. And he said, well, I've memorized it. But he had forgotten a vital step. And so it's really important that when you if you can get that hard copy from Mallory, that you go by step. Don't miss a step, because of getting the camera to focus effectively, learning to have the duplicate screens with the camera. There's lots of steps that you have to focus on.
Yeah, I second that. Absolutely have that checklist of what to do. I mean, there are so many times we forget even the basics, right? Like how many times have you left your flash drive in the classroom? Right. Now, imagine that's just for a regular face-to-face class. And I know people do because I find them all the time for other instructors leaving their flash drives around. And so now add a whole bunch of steps you have to do because you're teaching the in-person thing like you would normally do, but plus the Zoomer thing. So there's like double the steps there. And so you're probably going to, have a good chance of missing one because there's the sheer number of things that you have to do. That number of things is again, it's a lot to do, a lot to think about. Having the checklist can give you that moment of breather, like I don't, de-stress, I have the list, follow the list, and the plan will go smoothly, right? So that's one less thing you got to think about because there's, plenty to think about when you got students here, students there, and you're trying to, at the same time, teach a class. It's a lot. And in terms of teaching, another thing to note is improvisation can, be a great thing for teaching. A lot of teachers like to, dare I say, shoot from the hip, right? Show up with a general idea of what they're going to do, but they kind of let the flow of the class session go. And that's fine if that's how you teach. Just remember that however you teach, if you do a lot of improvisation, remember that you should practice this, again, in the classroom with the camera. Make sure it works with the dual modality format, okay? Preparation is key here. And if it's not necessarily preparation necessarily maybe of your content, at least prepare by practicing and making sure it works. So how do you get students to participate? Now you've done all this work. Now we need the students to do some work, right? They need to participate. Well, first of all, you have to encourage it. And again, set the standard early on that you are going to expect Roomers and Zoomers to participate as one community classroom. So encourage participation constantly, and don't forget the Zoomers. A lot of times, we get so focused on what we're doing and we're teaching to the students in the room. Don't forget the Zoomers are there, okay? And one way to remember that is maybe write yourself a note that says, check for participation from Zoomers or something. Get them to participate because if they're talking to you, it's going to be hard for you to forget about them, right? Unless you have them on mute or something. But as long as the tech is working right and they're talking to you, then you won't forget about the Zoomers. And they should be part of the classroom too. Think of activities, go back to the drawing board, go back to a blank piece of paper and say, okay, what activities can I come up with that will work to include Roomers and Zoomers? If you want to do a debate, debate's easy when everyone's in the classroom. Will it work with the dual modality format? You want to have a classroom discussion with small groups. How does that look in the dual modality format? One way that we can try and connect everybody is through polling. A lot of Zoom has anonymous polling features. That is proven very popular among students. When I was teaching at Texas A&M in College Station, a really popular thing they had were the clickers, where students could click and do anonymous polling. That's a way to do it with the 300-person lecture hall. But now with Zoom and devices and everything, students can do it from their device, and it's a lot easier. But again, that has been a very tried and true method of encouraging low stakes participation amongst students. And that's a way that you can do it from Zoomers and Roomers, potentially get them all involved. And again, this is something that's been done for a long time, but with the new remote Zoom era, it's definitely taken on a whole new meaning and it's become much more popular for a lot of students and professors. Breakout rooms and small groups. We all want small group discussions, right? That's where a lot of learning can occur. It's a safe zone for students to talk. Think about how that works in the dual modality session. You can't just say, hey guys, count off, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then go get in your groups. It works a little different. So plan ahead, again, preparation. How does this work with the Zoom students? Do you have some students in class who have devices and can maybe go in a breakout room on Zoom? Are you going to just say, well, the Zoomers have their breakout rooms and the Roomers have their breakout rooms? You can do that, but again, think about, are you then dividing the class into Roomers versus Zoomers, and are they going to bridge that gap and then come together as a community and classroom? So these are all things to think about. It may work for you that way, it may not, but small groups, we use them. this is a kind of a controversial point in the literature too. A lot of the people, some people swear by them, even the Zoom break rooms. Some people, I think it was Flower Darby, she does a lot of writing on online teaching, and I'm pretty sure she said that I think she's the one that said she will not use the Zoom breakout rooms. But again, everyone has their own opinion. Just practice it, think it through, give it a test run in your class. If it doesn't work, just be prepared to figure something else out. Flexibility is going to be key here. But the idea is figure out how you get students involved. Even if it's just them saying something, small and simple, just have them talking to each other. And the best way to do that is something that, unfortunately, I can't tell you. You're going to have to figure out kind of what works best for your classroom. Make sure roomers and Zoomers can hear each other, because if they can't, then they can't really communicate. And so one method is try to always repeat what's being said for the roomers and for the Zoomers. So if someone in the back of the class raises their hand and has a comment, the microphones in Brazos 200 are great, don't get me wrong, but you should get in the habit of trying to repeat that stuff. It's good for your in-person students as well, but also just to ensure that the Zoomers will also hear the comment. And vice versa. The Zoomers say a comment, make sure you repeat it for the roomers. They may not have heard it. Maybe the or the speaker above their head was out or something. Who knows? So just make sure that you're facilitating that communication. Now, it's a good habit to get into anyways in your classroom, just to make sure everyone's hearing everything. You have a student in the front row, maybe they really quietly say a comment. Don't assume the people in the back of the room heard that. It's a good to make sure everyone's communicating. Another idea, and this is one I'm actually going to try out with my classroom this semester, I think, Canvas discussion boards. Now, I've used these for online classes. This is like the standard tool for online classes, but I'm going to try it now. I'm doing one of those Friday morning classes this semester, and so we only meet once a week. And so I'm thinking of using the discussion board as a means of keeping my students communicating throughout the rest of the week, just to, again, try and create more of that sense of classroom community. For roomers and Zoomers, you guys may meet a couple times a week, but still, again, there's that divide of the Zoomers aren't physically present. But a Canvas discussion board may be a place, again, in that communal space on Canvas for them to come together and help them talk and communicate with each other directly and create that sense of community. Again, discussion boards, if you've taught online, you should be very familiar with these. If not, I'm sure the TLC has some resources, or we'll be able to put together some resources to help out with those. I think, again, Raleigh was facilitating the online training course, and that should go over the discussion boards, if I recall correctly. But if you're not online certified and you have questions about discussion boards, the TLC should have some resources or some people there to help you or direct you. That's a good way, I think, to get them to collaborate. There are other tools as well. You can come up with different types of group projects, using technology. Just make sure whatever you use that you're familiar with it and comfortable with it. Be prepared for students to have no idea how to use it and to have to ask you how to use it. So if you're using some sort of collaboration tool, say Flipgrid or something like, I know that's pretty popular. I don't personally use it, but I know a lot of people do. Make sure you know how to use it first before you ask your students to use it. Now, those projects can be fun and they can be a great way for students to connect with each other. But again, if they have a question and you can't answer it, then you're kind of stuck. So make sure that you are familiar with whatever method you're using to try and get students to connect with each other. If you're using any sort of technology or tools, make sure that you know how to use them first. Another idea for encouraging participation and getting students more involved in classes, to invite online guest speakers. This is something that's really cool and unique in this new Zoom era, is that you can invite people from anywhere in the world to your class. I just saw on Twitter, I think it was this morning, a really famous historian was like, hey, by the way, guys, I'm available if anybody wants me to Zoom into their classes this semester. Just shoot me a message, That is really amazing to see that you could connect with someone like that, and then, someone who's very prominent in your field could come into your classroom and talk to your students. Let's say that there's a really cool topic out there that you maybe don't know as much about. reach out to the expert and say, hey, can you drop in my class, and get your students excited about it. Say, hey, we got this really cool expert coming in, you know. And that could be a way of generating student interest and participation as well, because, you know, if they're excited, they get into it, and then they'll participate. So that could be a good way to get students more involved as well. And as a final note, I put this at the end, but I did put it in, you know, in bold letters, important. Remember to check on the Zoomers regularly. Don't forget about them. I know I said this already, but it's worth mentioning again. Don't forget about the Zoomers. You know, when you're teaching and you're in the zone and you're talking to the students in class, don't forget those people are still online. It's like, you know, in the old days of telephones, right? You're with your friends and someone calls on the phone and you put the phone down to talk to your friends. Don't forget there's someone still on the phone, okay? That's what the Zoomers are. They're still on the phone. Don't forget that they're there just because they're not physically present, okay? Talk to them. Include them in the discussion. Make sure that they're able to, again, feel like they're part of the classroom experience. So some best practices. I think a great idea, guys, is Canvas classroom space. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, let's look at assignments. It's a great way to have a single modality for all assignments in your class if you assign them all through Canvas. Some of you may really like paper assignments. I know there's some people in my department who just, tech is not their thing and they love everything on paper. You know, well, what do you do for the Zoomers, right? That works for the in-person ones, the roomers there, but what about the Zoomers? So do you create an alternate test for them? You can, but that's a lot of work. And it creates confusion. We'll talk more about that with creating assessments in a minute. But if you have one type of assessment and it's through Canvas, that is a space, a common space all students can use, roomers and Zoomers. And if you have one place with the single assignment creation point, then that's easier on you because grading is quicker, right? You can keep track of your assignments. They're all in Canvas, they're all in place. You're not saying, well, half my students have the paper, half of my students have the online quiz, and especially if you're combining those CRNs into one Canvas section, that can get really confusing. So I recommend doing one assessment type. So if you're going to give, at the end of Unit 1, a test, do that test one way. And make sure it's a way that everyone can access. It'll be easier on you. And if it's in Canvas, it's easier to track all this. Canvas can automatically grade some of the multiple choice stuff, you know, hint, hint, to save yourself a little time there. So Canvas is a good way to, again, create this single way of doing it. And it's not only easier on you, but at the end of the day, it's good for the students. Let's be honest here. This creates equity in the assignment. If you have some students taking it online, some students in person, those are two different experiences. And the assessment will not actually be equitable. So to keep it fair for everybody, and to make your lives easier, I definitely recommend, if you're going to do an assignment, do it in one format. And I recommend doing Canvas because I think that's the easiest way to do it. If you got your emails, you know that the Disability Office has also recommended doing a single modality for assignments, and they've recommended doing Canvas because they're short-staffed and they're going to have a hard time doing a whole bunch of extra proctoring stuff. So again, this is another way to not only help you out, help your students out, but help out that office as well. So I highly recommend focusing on that single modality for your assignments. Why else should you keep a Canvas classroom space? Well, it's a single space for all students to access the course materials. So all students can go there and see all your stuff there, whether it's worksheets, whether it's handouts, readings. It's all logically organized, and it's all right there for the students, whether they're roomers or Zoomers, they all have equal opportunity to see it. Now, I know, again, some people really like the paper handouts and stuff, but just try and think equitably here. You know, what works best for everybody? What can everybody have access to? And so try to stick to a way that's equitable, I think, for everybody.
And Aaron, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
So do we ask roomers to bring computer on testing day?
That's a great question. I would say, in my personal opinion, I would have it done where it's the same experience for roomers and Zoomers. So I would actually not have the assessment done in class just for the roomers while the Zoomers get to take it at home. Why is that? Well, as much as we like to really trust our students, the Zoomers will have unsupervised time to take the test. I'm not alleging anything here, but I will say that there might be a few that are tempted to maybe peek at their textbook or pull out their phone, do a little Google search or something, and you have no idea of that because you can't see them. Whereas the roomers, even if they bring their laptops in, they're not at their at-home desk. You can see what they're looking at, so they don't have that same opportunity, dare I say, to find extra help. And even though technically the Zoomers would be cheating, but again, we can't really control that, right? That's something that's well outside of our control. So what I would recommend is having assessments that are the same experience for the roomers and Zoomers. So I would not have any assessments necessarily in class. Could you still do them during class time? Sure. Just tell the roomers to stay home that day, and during your class time, it's from 9 to 10 o'clock, say your exam will be open from 9 to 10 on Canvas. So roomers stay home, Zoomers obviously stay home, and all of you guys should be expected to log in from wherever you guys log in on your computers at during class time to take this exam. It's timed at an hour or whatever. That's what I would recommend to make sure that everyone is having the most equitable experience with your assessment.
I have a class at night that only meets 1 day a week. So if on test day, and the same thing would be for you on your Friday class, on your test day, you usually have class after the test is over. How would you do that?
It's a good question.
You sure in hell don't have time to let them drive from home to get back onto campus.
Absolutely. And that's, again, something that you're going to have to work out with what works best for your class. For what I'm going to do for mine, I'm actually not going to have any tests that are during class time. I give them quizzes as like homework to do, and so they're actually outside of class time. If you want an in-class exam, you're going to have to kind of figure out what works best for you. You could potentially cut class early, let the students go home and give them time. But again, that's a challenge because then you're assuming they have time to get home. So if you're going to do that, if you have the 1 day a week, the marathon class, right? It's tricky to work it out so they can take it during class time, but then have the same possible experience in the dual modality format. That is probably one of the trickier ones to sort out. My way of solving it is I simply just don't have them restricted to taking them during class only. I offer up the assessment to be taken outside of class time.
I do the quizzes outside of class. The assignments get basically turned in outside of class on their time. But I thought we were supposed to have exams in class. I would not be opposed to doing them outside of class.
I don't know, maybe Amanda can answer this better. I don't know if there are any rules about that. So
Lance, I know that in the science department, you have nearly everything proctored. In the dual modality, if you're having dual modality for the science though, if you're going to allow some of your students to take the test online, or I don't know how you're doing it with your Zoom section, but you need to allow the students who are present in your classroom to have the test conducted in the same manner. So I don't know whether, so when you say that you're conducting class, so do you have dual modality, Lance? Is that what the issue is?
No, not this term, I don't, but I suspect
Okay.
I thoroughly will, not too long from now, but this semester I don't.
Okay, so then one of the things that if you're concerned about that is you could allow your people, your roomers who come in to perhaps take their test in the library or if the Mega Lab open.
I was figuring that might work, putting them in a room, but the point taken was, well, they don't get exactly the same opportunity. as to people who are working from home.
Right, right. And that's why
And you really can't do that.
if you put them
I
in
mean,
a room,
I've got a room that I could set up plenty of computers in and let people take their exams in that room, but it wouldn't be it wouldn't be the same as taking it at home.
well, it could be if you were not in the room. So
Yeah, but they have other people looking at them.
What do you mean other people?
If I have, say, for example, 15 people in one room working on computers, and somebody decides they want to open their textbook, it won't be a secret.
No, but
It won't be the same. The
but
person
then,
at home could do that.
right. So what you have to do is you just have to tell them these are the same, you just think of it as the same environment as at home. Whatever you would do at home if you were taking the test, you can do here, and just leave it at that. Because I really don't know how else you could get around that. But I know that with science.
I don't either. I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, I think with science, most of the time you have proctor tests anyway. So I'm not really sure if you guys are using Respondus or what you're doing for that. Because you could do a test for the people at home using Canvas with the Respondus lockdown, and you could do that also for your roomers. They could go into a room and they would also have to have the Respondus locked down as well there, and that might help a little bit on the teaching. It doesn't prevent them from picking up their phone and still looking things up.
Yeah, unfortunately, I saw a demonstration where somebody was actually using their phone, and I was actually looking upon the screen, and I never knew.
Yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Really quite spectacular. Anyway, I just thought I would ask about that, because that's one of the things that I'm puzzling through now. So thank you.
No, that's a great question, and that's the problem, is that there are going to be a lot of challenges with this, and sometimes we're just going to have to do the best we can. And again, that answer will be different for a lot of people depending on your discipline and your class structure and all sorts of things. I think we're running out of time, so I'm gonna pick this up pretty quick here. Record lectures. That is something that's become kind of a standard go-to option. A lot of people do now, and a lot of students are starting to expect it. It's not required, absolutely not, but it can be very beneficial to your students. It can, again, be a resource for them outside of the class to go back. A lot of students say, I didn't hear what you said in class. I didn't have time to write down my notes. I was writing down too much, or I didn't quite get it. It's a great way for them to go back and look. It's also a great way for you to go back and check yourself. And you can say, hey, what do I look like when I'm teaching? Does it look, if I, sit in the student seat for a minute and see what it looks like. If you're going to write your assessments, a student says, or even after taking an assessment, student says, hey, you didn't teach that in class. Go back to the recording and say, oh, no, I did. Look here, day 15, about 30 minutes in, go back to the video and see. But just remind your students that if you do record your lectures, that this doesn't excuse them from class. They still need to be present in the moment. And that's part, again, of creating the community and collaborating with each other. Zoom, the Zoom chat. Some of you have been using it during this session. You know that it's a great benefit. I definitely recommend you integrate that into your classroom. It's tough to watch though sometimes, especially when you're teaching. So you may want to try and find a student maybe who brings a cell phone or a laptop with them to class and get a volunteer to monitor the chat for you while you are teaching. Because there's only so many things we can juggle at once, right? And that could definitely help to make sure that you're not missing out on the Zoomers or even the roomers if the roomer has a laptop and they want to use the chat feature. It's been a lot of people have talked about how it's a great way to encourage student participation, and especially with the roomers and Zoomers and dual modality, it's a great way for them to talk to each other as well. And there are some ideas you can do, like a waterfall in chat. These different ideas you can do to encourage participation, to get students to collaborate with each other across the modalities. So students, just make sure that, watch the mute, unmute thing. We've all experienced that. But students can also use Zoom on their phones and laptops, in the room. Don't exclude the roomers from being on Zoom as well. But if they are doing the Zoom in the classroom, make sure that you guys work out the tech on that. Make sure they're all muting and got their sound down and all that so you don't get the feedback.
And Aaron, would you briefly explain what a waterfall is in case some people don't know what that is?
Yeah, a waterfall, the idea is that you ask a question and then they all type their answers in the chat, but they don't hit enter. So they don't actually submit their response to the chat until you do like a countdown or something, and then they all do it at once. And so then all their answers start popping up at the same time in the chat box. And then you kind of get hopefully some unbiased answers, and you get to see what everyone's seeing. Everyone's answering at the same time, so you don't get that bandwagon effect of students just saying, oh, well, their answer sounded good. But it's fun to see what everyone has to say, and it looks really cool when the chat just starts kind of popping up with all these comments at the same time. And so that's a fun little trick that a lot of people use to encourage participation through the Zoom chat feature. Assessments, I promise we talk about them. We're going to zip through it. If you guys would like to see these slides afterwards, we can provide them. But just to quickly go over this, multiple choice questions. There's, some people say they're great, some people don't like them, but at the end of the day, they can be used effectively. It's all about how you design them, and again, about how you think about using them. In terms of using them for dual modality assessments, if you are concerned about students maybe borrowing their textbook for a minute during an exam, there are ways you can try to mitigate that usage of outside help. Few tricks. One, make it so they can only see one question at a time. Make it so they can't go back and forth between questions. A question pops up, they have to answer it before they can go on to the next one. If the test is timed, this means they can't sit there and Google every question if the time crunch is there. There are pros and cons to this. One pro, obviously, is that it's going to decrease cheating. A con is that it's going to add stress to students, and some students may not like it. It's up to you to decide what's best. You could use a pool of questions where they get random questions selected from the pool. That also helps mitigate cheating. Randomize the questions and randomize the answer choices. Canvas offers that feature where in your quiz, you have 4 selections. You can randomize the order those selections come in. So it's not always A, B, C, D, but then they're all mixed up for each different student. So then they can't just say, hey, the answers are in this order, A, D, C, B, or whatever, because they're all different. So that's another way to try and mitigate some cheating. Respondus, or browser lockdown, Amanda had mentioned that. That's a way to try and make sure your students aren't using Google or any other things in their browser, but a concern with this is if you do teach dual credit to high school students and they're using their computers, laptops, or their school's laptops, I have heard there are a lot of problems with the high school laptops and computers because they are so restrictive on access for different apps and software. So I recommend to keep it simple with software. A lot of people still use Respondus, but you have dual credit, you will probably get some emails about that not working. Again, have both groups of students take the test online, and you can limit the time the test is open. Assessment design. A good rule of thumb is, make it low stakes. Do a lot of low stakes assignments instead of 1 or 2 big tests. That will try and ease students' motivations to cheat. You can do assessments that are written, assessments that involve more critical thinking and analysis, and then you can also compare the written ones in a plagiarism checker like turnitin.com. But no matter how you design your assessments, make sure that they're equitable for roomers and Zoomers. That is the key. Make sure it's equitable. Both groups should be allowed to use the same materials and have an equitable experience with taking the assessment, whether it's writing an essay, taking a quiz, taking a test, whatever it is. So 5 key takeaways. Again, this is just kind of a wrap up of what I think some of the, if I had to come up with a list of what are the 5 biggest things that we talked about, this would be my list. Develop this mindset that all students are members of one classroom community. And then when you have that mindset, try and get your students to buy into that mindset as well. Maintain a Canvas course as a communal space that everyone has the equal experience with, because they're all going to log into Canvas through a computer. They're all going to experience that the same way. While they all can't be in the classroom together, Canvas can be experienced the same way for everybody. Set the expectation that all students participate, Roomers and Zoomers, during class time. Make sure that you set the expectation early on and you stick with it. Don't forget the Zoom students. Don't get so off into what you're doing. I know we get really into our content and we really love our disciplines, but don't forget about your Zoomers. It's easy with the Roomers. You can't forget about them. They're staring right at you. But the Zoomers, they're on that little computer screen. And if you walk away from the podium, you may forget they're even there. Like that phone that you just kind of put down and walked away from. Back in the day when, phones had cords and you couldn't just carry it in your pocket with you. You don't want to forget about the Zoomers. And make sure equity is present in your course design, your assessment design. Make sure that Roomers and Zoomers are getting the same experience, or at least as close to it as you can possibly do. Okay, try and make it fair for both of them, because they are registering for the same class. It shows up on their transcript the same. It should be the same experience, at least to the best of your abilities. So these are just some ideas from the literature. These are some things that have come up time and again in terms of what people have been writing about dual modality classes. There's a lot more to discuss. Not all this applies to everybody. Not all of it applies to everybody evenly. Take what you can from this. These are not requirements, but these are recommendations to help you have a good semester. If you have any questions, you can always email me, Dr. Salinas. I'm pretty sure you're open for email questions too. So if you have questions, feel free to email us, and I'll stick around if anyone has some more questions here. But I think we're over time, so I want to wrap it.
Thank you, Aaron, so much.